Okay, we're back live on YouTube. For the record, this is going to be position number 5 on my calendar. State of Georgia versus Michael Keith Billingsley. Mr. Billingsley is charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50573 with committing the offense of murder. He's also charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50574 with committing the offense of terroristic threats or acts. He's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50575 with committing the offense of criminal attempt. What was that criminal attempt?
Robbery.
Robbery. Okay, thank you. He's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50576 with committing the offense of criminal damage to property in the second degree. He's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50577 with committing the offense of possession of a firearm or weapon during the commission of a crime. And finally, he's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50578 with committing the offense of aggravated assault. Mr. Billingsley is present. He's represented here by attorney Tiffany Pleasant. The state is being represented by attorney Cheryl Freeman. Mr. Billingsley, before we get started, I just want to caution you, sir, that nothing you say here is privileged, nor is it confidential. So please don't say anything you would not want the whole world to know. Okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Freeman, you may swear in your witness and present your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to affirm that the testimony about to provide in the case of State of Georgia versus Michael Billingsley will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
My name is Detective Thomas Bastier. I'm employed by Clayton County Police Department, currently assigned to Criminal Investigative Division.
How long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
Approximately 5 years.
Sir, were you assigned to work on a case involving Michael Billingsley of an incident that occurred in April of 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
And regarding that incident, county police officers respond to the area of Clemens Road and Spivey Road in reference to a person shot?
That is correct.
And for your investigation, what did you learn that happened when the officers arrived at that location?
Basically that a gentleman by the name of Tremone Calloway, Michael Billingsley, and another individual followed a victim from the South Lake Mall, and while in traffic attempted to rob said victim with armed robbery with firearms. The victim had his own firearm, and in his vehicle were 2 juveniles and his partner. So he was protecting himself and his family and proceeded to shoot at Mr. Billingsley and Tremone Calloway. Calloway was struck in the chest and killed. Billingsley and the other gentleman went ahead and left the area and left Mr. Calloway there on the road.
Was Mr. Calloway eventually transported to the hospital?
Yes, he was taken to GBI.
And just so because we're recording, when Mr. Calloway was transported, was he already pronounced deceased?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
All right, so going back, just so we're clear, was the decedent, Mr. Calloway, was he riding in a vehicle with Mr. Billingsley?
Yes, that is correct.
And were they the only 2 people in the vehicle?
No, there was another gentleman that was Marquise Abrams was also present in that vehicle.
Okay. And when they were in the vehicle, were you able to determine who was the driver of that vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so at some point, were you able to talk to the victim of the robbery or the attempted robbery?
Yes.
And what was his name?
Mr. Lowe.
Mr. Lowe, okay. What information was Mr. Lowe able to provide regarding what happened?
Basically that he was followed, he believed to be followed from South Lake Mall. And the vehicle, it was a Challenger, Dodge Challenger, that Mr. Abrams and Mr. Billingsley and Mr. Calloway were in. It pulled off in front of him, attempted to basically block him into traffic, and the two gentlemen got out with firearms brandished, and Mr. Lowe proceeded to use his own firearm and go ahead and defend himself. And as he backed away, his car was struck multiple times by the shooters.
Were you able to take photos of the damage to his vehicle?
Yes, ma'am. CSI did that.
Were shell casings also collected?
Yes, ma'am, there were.
Detective, were you able to determine whose vehicle Mr. Billingsley, and Mr. Calloway were in?
No, we do not know who the vehicle belonged to. The license plate, the Georgia license plate that was on the tag, that was on the vehicle, was actually a stolen tag.
Was there any type of video surveillance to show this incident?
The incident, not necessarily, no, ma'am.
Okay. So at some point when Mr. Billingsley and Mr. Calloway and other gentlemen drove up to Mr. Lowe, did they say anything to him?
I believe Mr. Lowe said something to the effect of, "Hey, give it up," or something along those lines.
And at that point, did Mr. Lowe indicate whether or not he saw those guys with weapons?
Yes. He immediately noticed they were brandishing firearms.
Who all did Mr. Lowe have in the car with him?
He had his girlfriend and two juveniles.
And also, can you describe the damage to Mr. Lowe's vehicle?
It was struck several times by gunfire.
And would that damage to the vehicle be estimated over $500?
Yes, ma'am.
Were any of the passengers in the car with Mr. Lowe struck at all?
No, ma'am.
Were any of them injured in any kind of way?
No, ma'am.
Detective, you also took out a warrant for terroristic threats regarding Mr. Billingsley. Can you tell us what the basis for the terroristic threats was?
Yes, Mr. Billings, he was shooting at a conveyance. Okay. And so anytime you shoot at a vehicle, that's considered terroristic threats, since it's a conveyance.
And did all of that take place in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
How were you able to determine that Michael Billingsley was the person involved in this shooting?
Two ways is there was actually a previous armed robbery in Atlanta, and I was working with an Atlanta detective who informed me that they were working with some females. The females advised us that Mr. Billingsley and Mr. Abrams were with Calloway when he got shot. The other thing is we actually got Mr. Billingsley phone records. Using Cellhawk, you can put him at the incident at the incident location at the date and time. And that same phone was actually, that uses that phone number, was on his person when he was arrested on unrelated charges in Cleveland, Ohio. So working with Cleveland PD, I was able to get a search warrant for the phones to be basically ripped and that information given to me.
Detective, have you since been able to interview Mr. Billingsley?
I attempted to go to Clayton County Jail, and he invoked his rights to an attorney.
And Detective, were you able to get any other information from anyone else other than the Cleveland Police Department to help you learn the identity of Michael Billingsley?
Atlanta Police Department.
Okay, and did you speak to any family members?
Yes. We talked to Mr. Calloway's mother, and she advised us that he left Cleveland and came to Atlanta with Mr. Billingsley, known as Mikey B, and Mr. Abrams.
Is Mr. Abrams the third individual who was in the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is he still wanted at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Pleasant?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, you indicated that you spoke to another officer out of the city of Atlanta, correct?
Yes, another Atlanta detective. Yes.
What's that detective's name?
Detective Henderson.
Henderson?
Yes.
And when did this conversation occur?
When I don't, I'm not 100% sure the exact date, ma'am. But it occurred during the course of me investigating the murder of Mr. Tremont Calloway.
Okay, so this murder occurred April 8th of 2021, correct?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
So how close in proximity did you have the conversation with the detective out of Atlanta?
I'd say maybe a month, maybe less.
30 days or less?
Yes.
And the two females that you referenced, did you personally speak with them?
No, ma'am.
So the information from the two females comes solely from the Atlanta detective?
That is correct.
And precisely what are they saying with regards to Mr. Billingsley?
That he was with Mr. Calloway when he was shot.
And did they make statements as to how they're aware of this information?
Yes, they advised me that that's what Mr. Billingsley said.
So what is the relationship between these two women and Mr. Billingsley?
They performed an armed robbery in Atlanta, and they actually came to Cleveland to go ahead and commit these other crimes. And they have an association with the two females. Okay.
My question was, what is the relationship between the two females and Mr. Billingsley?
They're friends. They have an association.
Are the two females reside in Atlanta?
Yes.
Did they give any other information as to their association with Mr. Billingsley?
Yeah, they told Detective Henderson that they went ahead and committed a robbery in Atlanta at a hotel with him.
That the females committed a robbery in a hotel?
The females, Mr. Billingsley, and I believe Mr. Calloway and Mr. Abrams was there as well, but that's not really my case, ma'am. So I'm not 100% sure of all the details.
But this is the information that you use to connect Mr. Billingsley to the crime in Clayton County.
Partially.
Were there any independent eyewitnesses that came forward who witnessed the exchange between Mr. Lowe and Mr. Calloway and the other individual shooter?
Yeah, there were witnesses on the scene.
How many?
I believe that 3 or 4 written statements were collected.
And out of the 3 or 4 statements collected, did anyone actually describe Mr. Billingsley as participating in this alleged crime?
They were wearing masks and like a black hoodie, so they were not able to give an actual physical description. Just the incident as it occurred.
So as you sit here today, you don't know that Billingsley actually held a gun on April 8th of 2021.
I believe he did, yes.
As you sit here today, you don't know that to be a fact, do you?
To be a fact, I can't say for certain it's a fact. No, ma'am.
Do you have a physical description of Abrams?
Yes, I do.
And is it your position that Abrams is the one that stayed in the car or Billingsley remained in the vehicle?
Abrams stayed in the vehicle.
And what are you basing that on?
I'm basing it on the fact that with the cell records that I got and some Instagram messages, and as well as the fact that when the 2 females that Mr. Billingsley committed another robbery with, they advised that Billingsley was the one out of the vehicle.
But the 2 females weren't physically present when this incident happened in Clayton County, correct?
That is correct.
And you mentioned Instagram messages. What are those? This is my first time hearing. What Instagram messages do you have that allegedly connect my client to this crime?
Communication between his Mikey B account and talking with his sister and some things like that, where she goes ahead and advises that basically Mr. Billingsley killed Tremont.
So you're alleging that his sister tells him that he committed this crime?
That is correct.
And was his sister present on April 8th of 2021?
No, she wasn't.
And these Instagram records, have they been placed into evidence?
Yes.
And his sister, has she been interviewed by you?
Yes, I've spoken with her.
And precisely what did she say during her interview?
She was the one that gave me Mr. Billingsley's Instagram account. Also verified that the 3 gentlemen, Billingsley, Abrams, and Mr. Calloway, were all coming down to Atlanta to commit crimes, and that they were with Mr. Calloway when he was shot and killed.
And who performed the Cellbrite extraction of my client's cell phone? Hello?
I think we lost him.
I think we lost him too.